So how my feelings showed up for me was this like chronic fatigue. But when I started like really looking into it and dissecting it, yeah, I was super anxious, super, and I didn't even know it. That's how bad I was suppressing my emotions because I was like, no, you're not anxious. You're fine.
Was there a moment maybe that you were like, things
Yeah.
clicked, or?
So yeah. So I would say the most profound moment was, so they were talking about the dog at the table, and then I said, I don't remember, but I said something negative. And then my daughter turned around and she was like, you know, and she's so sweet, right? Like if anybody else would have told me this, I would have been like, why you don't appreciate me, blah, 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 right? And she was like, you know, Mom, it feels like you don't have any love in your body.
Wow.
If there's one thing like on the tip of your brain that's like, I wish people that don't do what we do, I wish there's this one thing they would understand, what would that be?
The effects of compounding.
Yes.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I would have said something along the line of freedom. You know, the world is a huge place filled with wonderful people and gorgeous scenery. And, you know, go, if you can go and see it. It changes your mind, your perspective, the way you interact with the rest of who you're going to be tomorrow. You know, and you know, compound interest, that helps a lot. Of course it does. Yeah, really.
Get to financial independence, all I did was invest in the stock market, a little bit in bonds, maybe 10%. And you can do that with as few as 3 funds. And I kind of champion the Bogleheads, and that's a name based on John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard. His followers talk about a 3-fund portfolio, total stock market, which is US domestic stocks, and it holds virtually every publicly traded stock that you can buy. Total international stock, which is another fund that will hold everything outside of the US that's publicly traded, and then a bond fund that holds something like 8,000 different bonds of various duration and public and corporate bonds. And so with those 3 funds, you can have amazing diversification, super low fees, and you're going to get solid market returns.
You're 5 apartment complexes. And then I was still shopping for number 6 when my wife stepped up and says, now, wait a minute. We have enough property to take care of us for the rest of our life. Why are you still shopping for more? And this came back to some place where my wife saved me when I was a resident. And I was reminiscing of that conversation when she said this. I came home a second-year resident. I got my license, and they told me I could moonlight for $100 an hour in the ER. And I was so excited because I had recently calculated I was making $3 an hour as a resident, and they were going to pay me $100 an hour. But I was excited about the $100 an hour. So then she says to me, so why would you go to work to earn money we don't need with time you don't have? And I never thought of it like that. And she was right.
ADKAR is a results-oriented model to the question, what are the building blocks somebody needs to make a change successfully? Like, what do I need to do to help somebody? What are the blocks they need to have to step forward out of where they are today through that messy transition to get to the new way of doing things? So ADKAR is an acronym, ADKAR. It's awareness of the need for change, desire to participate and support the change, knowledge on how to make the change, the ability to implement those new skills and behaviors, and finally, reinforcement to sustain the change and make sure it sticks. I do make the joke that ProSci would be a complete failure if Jeff would have invented that ADKA model and forgot the R. That R is reinforcement, you know, because we know it's our natural, psychological, physiological tendency to go back to what we've always done.
You can't take yourself too seriously. You're just looking at genitals all day long.
Yeah.
It was very hard. I remember it being very, very hard. On call every other night for 3rd year, but it was incredible training. It gave me the gift of being able to do this as long as I want to do it. You do one thing for so long, that's why you can't actually conceive that there's something else that you could do. Mm-hmm. Not thinking like, do you know your work ethic and how smart you are to get yourself in this situation in the first place, right? Like, of course you can do something else. You're like, I have no talents. And you're like, actually, like, you're amazing for even being here. As soon as somebody tells me I know enough, then I'll do a podcast. Like, but I didn't do a fellowship in sexual health, right? So like, who am I? And I had this like lightning strike me in the bathroom, and it was with a voice, and the voice is like, nobody's coming to tell you that you can do this. Nobody's coming. And I'm like, well, better learn how to podcast then. Great sex. And if you have great sex, desire, well, you're going to want to do it again. And my hypothesis, a lot of people's hypothesis, is women are just having really shitty sex to begin with. Of course they're not desiring it. Going back again to putting things in our vagina doesn't give us orgasms. We really have to pay attention to the clitoris, the labia, all of our pelvic structures, all of our body, actually. So we're having shitty sex. We think we're broken because we don't have spontaneous desire. We're not spontaneously desiring melted ice cream, right? It's like, give me the good ice cream, I'll want it again. Give me melted ice cream, I'll never eat it. Mm-hmm. The orgasm gap is what % of the time does each person in the couple have an orgasm, right? And the heterosexual relationship, the woman, so the heterosexual female has the lowest amount of orgasms of any paired couple. Mm-hmm. Homosexual guy, they're doing great. Heterosexual man, he's doing great. Lesbian couples, they're doing pretty good. And then you have the heterosexual female, she's down here 30% of the time, 40% of the time she's having an orgasm. And then they think she's broken, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, the lesbians are having more orgasms.
Deep sutures in our study, in the closest model to human in skin healing, which is Yucatan hairless pigs, by the way. In Yucatan hairless pigs, deep sutures provided no mechanical benefit to the wound at day 10, and that was the earliest time point we tested. Whether there was deep sutures in there or no deep sutures, they had the same strength. So deep sutures failed before 10 days. Are they even effective at day 5? You know, if you look at the wound healing milieu of the skin, it is a violent place. Neutrophils coming in, mast cells coming in, lymphocytes coming in, fibroblasts throwing up collagen networks, collagenase is coming in and breaking stuff down. Like, that is a hostile environment. There's a lot of enzymes in there that are going to help with hydrolysis, temperature fluctuations, pH fluctuations. You know, when they quote strength of absorbable suture, they do it based on putting it in a third space of a rat or physiologic saline at body temperature. That's not like the healing dermis. That's a totally different thing. But because we built such a solid foundation at Suture Guard where we asked fundamental questions, we answered them, and we published it in peer-reviewed journals. And we did that from day one. Closure support fails here, but the healing is here. You're going to have the wound bust open, which is called wound dehiscence. So in a nutshell, we solved the problem of wound dehiscence and of wounds breaking open after surgery. And so we have clinical studies where we've shown that we reduce dehiscence on lower extremity excisional wounds. So the kind of wounds I make, we reduce dehiscence by 89%. In amputations, we reduce dehiscence by 80%. We actually reduce the need for reamputation in lower extremity amputation. And it's just because of those fundamental things. Better perfusion, less crap. You know, I did a study a few years ago on suture spacing, because another dogma is that the higher the number of sutures per inch, the better. Like, oh, they almost look like sewing jeans, right? Well, skin is not jeans. Skin has to heal. Denim is not going to heal. Like, denim is not going to heal together so that you could remove the stitches. But with humans, the stitches are going to get removed. So the less we can do to the skin, the better. So I did this study a few years ago where we just put one deep in the middle and one top in the middle, and then we bisected the wound. One half of the wound got high, like normal high density sutures, so stitches every like 3 or 4 millimeters. The other side, I did stitches every 9 millimeters. Which side healed better? The one that you didn't strangulate. It's Goldilocks. You want to put in enough support. It's not like sewing jeans. With sewing jeans, you can't have too many sutures. I'm sure there's people who sew jeans and it's like, yes, you can put too many sutures. But, you know, like double rows and triple rows of seams is not going to make the jean less strong. Putting too many stitches into a wound that's healing is going to strangulate the wound. And so there's a Goldilocks. Yeah, I'm not saying just if you got a wound this long, you put 1 stitch in it, but putting 1,000 in it is probably worse than putting 1 in it, because the wound edge gets no blood supply. And so that dogma of higher number of stitches is just not true. And so anyway, we published that. So fewer complications, and the wounds looked better with few stitches. My years of ER, I describe to people as it was an amazing job and a terrible career for me. I learned a lot about humanity. Like they call it like the difficult patient, which I hate that term. But I learned a lot about like when people are in a bad state, they behave in certain ways. And I learned how to deal with those people. So now like in my practice, like, oh, you're good at dealing with difficult patients. I'm good at dealing with people. Because people come from a lot of, you know, people have economic hardships and they're in pain, and it's going to make them behave in different ways. You know, some people can be in pain and agony and they're like, oh, hi, how are you today? And, you know, yes, my leg is broken, but how are you? But, you know, but not everybody's going to be like that, right? And so ER taught me a lot about dealing with people, you know, getting tough, doing lots of procedures. I got really good at doing procedures. But I knew I didn't want to do it when I was, you know, like I just turned 50. I didn't want to do it when I was 50. It wasn't for me. I know there's a lot of career ER docs out there, but for me, the other thing is I was doing it like 20 nights a month. So I was on a track to burnout because of my schedule, because of the intensity of where I was working, and because of my personality that I didn't want to be up at night. And I also, as a medical student, loved the variety and not knowing what was coming in. As an adult, when it's my license on the line, I increasingly didn't like.
Those are the intangibles, the intangible value, right? So tangible being the monetary portion of it, but there's the intangible, and that's like if you're a new physician going into a position, those intangibles, or actually wherever you are in the spectrum, the intangibles are as important as the tangibles are.
Mhm.
People focus so much on this is what I'm going to get paid, blah, 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 blah. Well, what is your life going to be like? Who are the people that you're around?
Mhm.
What are the cases that you're going to do? What are the expectations of practice? And those intangibles, you may find out that the job that pays you is at the high end of the spectrum. There's a reason it's at the high end of the spectrum is because they burn people out really quick, and or the people that they attract to that are not the most pleasant people to deal with. And so people who perhaps can't adhere to that or don't enjoy that, where the value, where they're not value driven, they're a monetarily driven clinic or whatever. This one specifically, though, is kind of returning to values.
Mhm.
Is this is it one of the foundations of kind of moving into that personal development space is to start understanding who you are. And if you don't understand what is important to you, and you haven't taken the moment to actually start defining that, one, there may be situations where things may feel uncomfortable and you're not going to know why. And if you don't know why, you're not going to be able to change them. Two, you may find yourself in a situation where your values are actually in conflict with whatever environment and then you may actually get stuck. And then you have a problem that's even going to be worse than it started with. And I think we've all done that, by the way.
Yeah. Listening to podcasts like this and other people that are articulating values or maybe words that you don't really use to describe situations, hearing people articulate in different ways and different perspectives sometimes can be like the aha moment for you.
Literally thought I was going crazy. And he said, no, you're not crazy. The world is crazy. I feel in many ways that saved my life. Like I was never suicidal at that point, but I was pretty damn close. So if you're going through a challenge with your practice and medicine and things aren't lining up, there are people out there to help. And certainly if you want to talk to me, just email me. But it isn't easy. And I don't want anybody to come through. Sometimes we hear these stories and they're like, oh, it's like the hero's journey was so easy. No, it wasn't freaking easy. I almost want to cuss right now. It was super, super, super freaking hard. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy in many ways, shapes, or form. Am I glad I did it? Yes. But if you're going through it, I definitely empathize with you and want to make sure that there are people who've gone through it that are here for you and there are resources available so you don't have to do it alone.